Welcome to Craving the Heat, where desire takes the lead and every story leaves you wanting more. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments and keep up with our latest naughty stories. From the outside, my life looked neat, ordinary, and disciplined. I was a 26-year-old administrative assistant in a mid-sized architecture firm, a place that always smelled faintly of coffee and pencil shavings. I showed up early, stayed late, and smiled in all the right places. To most people, I was invisible, and I liked it that way. But then there was him. Nathan Carter, 42. Senior partner, my boss. A man who carried himself with the kind of quiet authority that made people step aside when he walked down the hall. He wasn't loud, he wasn't flamboyant, but when he spoke, you listened. His shirts were always crisp, his watch gleamed, and the faint smell of his cologne lingered in the air long after he passed by. He had a wife, Claire. Everyone knew about her. She was often photographed on his arm at charity galas, dressed in flowing gowns, her auburn hair styled perfectly, her smile wide and rehearsed. Around the office, the mention of her was like invoking royalty. She belonged to his world, the world of success, glamour, and power, and I did not doubt it started one late evening when most of the office had already gone home. I was still at my desk, finishing reports, when I noticed Nathan in his office, tie loosened, staring at the skyline outside the window. The city lights poured in through the glass, painting his face in shadows. "You work too much," he said suddenly, his voice deep and startling in the silence. I laughed softly. I could say the same about you. For the first time, he looked at me, not as his assistant, but as if I were someone who existed outside of my role. His eyes lingered too long, his expression unreadable. And in that pause, something shifted. That night, he walked me to my car. His hand brushed mine when he passed me my keys. It was nothing. It was everything. From then on, our exchanges carried an invisible weight. A glance across the conference table, his hand resting a little too close to mine when he leaned over my desk. The silence between us stretched, charged, dangerous. The first time it happened, it was raining. Everyone had left early because of the storm, but he'd asked me to stay and help with a presentation. Hours passed, thunder echoing through the city, until finally the office was just the two of us. He closed his laptop with a sigh, leaned back, and looked at me with an intensity that burned through the dim light. "You drive me crazy," he said suddenly, his voice low, almost pained. I froze, my heart slamming against my ribs. "Nathan!" He crossed the room in 2 strides. His hand cupped my face, his mouth found mine, and before I could stop myself, I kissed him back. Every ounce of restraint I had crumbled in that single moment. The storm outside raged, but nothing compared to the chaos inside me. We didn't talk about it the next day, or the next, but the line had been crossed. And once it had, there was no going back. Weeks turned into months. We carved out secret moments in the cracks of our days. A stolen kiss in his office when no one was looking. Long drives under the guise of business meetings. Nights in hotel rooms where he held me like I was his entire world. With him, I felt seen, desired, cherished in a way I never thought possible, but there was always her Claire, the wife. The one who appeared at firm parties, her hand looped through his arm, her laughter echoing in perfect notes. She smiled at me politely, never suspecting a thing. Every time I saw her, guilt gnawed at me, but Nathan's hand on the small of my back later that night reminded me why I couldn't let go. He told me he loved me once. We were lying tangled in hotel sheets, the city humming below us. His voice was quiet, raw, stripped of the armor he wore in public. "I don't know how this happened," he murmured, pressing his lips to my temple. "But I can't imagine my life without you now." I believed him. Still, every time my phone buzzed with his name, I knew we were balancing on a fragile line. One wrong step, one careless moment, and everything would shatter. One evening, as we left the office together much later than usual, we spotted Claire waiting outside in her car. My stomach dropped, my pulse roaring in my ears. Nathan's hands stiffened around his briefcase, but his face betrayed nothing. He kissed my cheek, quickly like a boss saying goodnight to his assistant, then walked calmly to her car. She smiled, oblivious. He slipped behind the wheel and they drove away. I stood there in the shadows, shaken, torn between dread and longing. Because the truth was simple, my boss's wife didn't know about me, yet. But deep down, I knew that day was coming. When it did, nothing in our carefully balanced world would ever be the same dot after that night, when Claire unexpectedly appeared outside the office. Things between Nathan and me changed. Not in words, we never spoke of it, but in the way he held me closer afterward. Like he knew time was slipping through his fingers. The secrecy of it all only fueled the fire. Every morning, I walked into the office with my heart racing, aware of his presence even before I saw him. He would pass me in the hallway, his hand brushing mine just barely, his expression carefully neutral under the gaze of coworkers. But when we found moments to ourselves inside his locked office, in the stairwell between floors, in his car parked blocks away, we turned into something unrecognizable. He was tender yet desperate. I had never felt so alive, but guilt was always there, waiting, clawing at me. Sometimes, after he left to return to her, I would sit on my bed and cry, wondering if I was ruining not only her life, but mine. The cracks began to show when Claire started stopping by the office more often. She came with lunch for him, warm. Smiles, her hands slipping over his shoulder like a brand. She'd greet me kindly, like I was nothing more than the diligent assistant keeping your husband's schedule in order. But her eyes, those sharp, assessing eyes, made me wonder if she knew more than she let on. One afternoon, after she'd left, Nathan closed his office door behind him and leaned against it, his jotting to ask questions. He said, running a hand through his hair, "What kind of questions?" I asked, my stomach tightening, where I'm spending my late nights. Why I'm not home as much. She's not stupid. The room went quiet. For the first time, I saw fear flicker in his eyes. But beneath it, there was also defiance. "I don't care," he whispered, crossing to me in 2 strides. "I can't give you up." And I believed him. We kept going, even as the walls closed in. The passion between us only grew more reckless. One night, after a long conference trip where we pretended to be nothing more than colleagues, he followed me back to my hotel room. We didn't speak, we didn't think, we just fell into each other like gravity had pulled us there. That night, I realized this wasn't just an affair. It was something that had already rewired me completely. But with that realization came danger. Claire began appearing in unexpected places, at the office, at events she normally skipped, even once outside the cafe where Nathan and I had just left minutes before. It was as though she could sense the invisible thread tying us together. One night, Nathan called me from his car, his voice low and broken. "She confronted me," he said, my breath caught. "About us? Not directly, but she knows something's wrong. She kept asking if there was someone else. I didn't answer." His silence was heavy. I couldn't tell her no because it would have been a lie. That admission hung between us like a confession neither of us could take back. After that, things spiraled. Claire started watching him more closely, showing up at the office without warning. I found myself glancing over my shoulder constantly, terrified she would walk in at the wrong time. But despite the danger, Nathan's grip on me only tightened. He texted me at all hours, demanded to see me even when it wasn't safe. And I always said yes, because I loved him. One night, he took me to a small cabin outside the city, far from the eyes of anyone who might recognize us. The air smelled of pine, the stars above us endless. For 2 days, it was just us, no deadlines, no guilt, no Claire. He cooked for me, held me against the firelight, whispered things he never dared say before. "If I had met you first," he murmured, brushing his lips against my shoulder, "everything would have been different." But we both knew time didn't work. That way, when we returned, reality came crashing back. Claire was waiting in the lobby of the firm, her arms crossed, her gaze sharp enough to cut through steel. She didn't look at me, but she didn't need to. The message was clear. She knew. That night, Nathan called me, his voice ragged. She's threatening to leave me. To take everything. The house, the kids, the firm's reputation. He stopped himself, his breath shaking. But all I can think about is you. And that was the moment I realized this wasn't sustainable. The affair that had once felt. Like oxygen now threatened to strangle us both. Still, the heart doesn't bow to logic. The next time I saw him, all the fear, all the guilt, all the uncertainty dissolved the second he kissed me. His hands framed my face, his body pressed to mine. And I knew even if this ended in ruin, I would never regret loving him. Because in his arms, I'd found something that no rules, no vows, no promises could give me. A love so consuming, so undeniable that even in the shadows, it felt brighter than anything else in my life. And though his wife didn't know about me yet, deep down, I knew the truth was only a heartbeat away from breaking free. The night Nathan told me Claire had begun to suspect something, sleep wouldn't come. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, his words echoing over and over. She's not stupid, Dot, it was true. Claire was smart, intuitive, and fiercely protective of the life she had built with him. If she sensed a crack in our marriage, she would not rest until she found its source. And yet, even with the walls closing in, neither Nathan nor I could. The next morning, I told myself I would keep my distance. I buried myself in paperwork, avoided his gaze during meetings, and skipped our usual lunchtime escapes. But then, late in the afternoon, a message lit up my phone. Meet me. Conference room. Now. My pulse leapt. I shouldn't go, I knew that, but my feet betrayed me. The room was dark when I entered, blinds pulled shut, and before I could speak, Nathan's arms were around me. He kissed me like a man starved, like he'd been holding his breath all day and only now allowed himself air. I can't do this without you, he whispered against my mouth. Don't ask me to. The world outside that room faded. It didn't matter that Claire had questions, that our coworkers bustled just beyond the door. All that mattered was his hands, his lips, the quiet desperation that bound to stop, but passion was not enough to drown out reality forever. One evening, Claire appeared at my desk after hours. Her smile was polite, her tone casual, but her eyes pinned. Me in place. You're here late, she said, glancing at the stack of files I pretended to be busy with. Yes, I managed, forcing calm into my voice. Deadlines. Her lips curved, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. Nathan spends a lot of late nights here, too. I suppose you keep each other company. The question was sharp, deliberate. My throat went dry. Before I could stumble through an answer, Nathan emerged from his office. Claire. His voice was warm, but there was a flicker of tension beneath it. I wasn't expecting you. Her gaze lingered on me for a beat too long before she turned to him. Clearly. That night, Nathan showed up at my apartment, rain dripping from his coat, his face etched with guilt. She knows, he said simply. I pulled him inside, closing the door behind us, fear thrumming in my chest. Did you tell her? No, but she doesn't need me to. She sees it in me, in the way I look at you. His hand cupped my cheek, his thumb brushing my skin. And she's right. I don't look at her the way I look at you. His confession broke something inside me. The guilt, the fear, the shame, they all twisted into something heavier. Yet beneath it all was a truth I could no longer ignore. I loved him. We spent that night tangled together, clinging as if the world might end at dawn. And in a way, it had. Because nothing could ever go back to how it was in the weeks that followed, the strain showed in every corner of Nathan's life. He became sharper at the office, quieter at home, restless in every moment we weren't together. Claire's suspicion grew until it shadowed him like a storm cloud. And me? I lived in a constant state of contradiction. Every kiss with him felt like heaven. Every time he left to go home to her, it felt like hell. Then one night, he broke. I can't keep living like this, he said, his voice raw as he paced my living room. She knows, and I can't lie anymore. But if I leave her, I'll lose. Everything, the house, the kids, maybe even the firm. I swallowed hard. And what about me? He stopped, his eyes locking onto mine. You're the only thing I don't want to lose. The truth hung heavy in the air. We both knew what it meant. A choice was coming, one that could destroy more than just his marriage. But in that moment, choices didn't matter. He crossed the room in 2 strides, pulled me into his arms, and kissed me with a fire that left me trembling. That night wasn't just passion, it was surrender. We gave ourselves over completely. No barriers, no hesitation, no fear of tomorrow. The world could burn and we would still have each other. When morning came, sunlight spilling across his bare shoulders, I realized something I hadn't admitted. Before, I didn't just want him in stolen hours and hidden places. I wanted him in the open, fully mine. And if Claire didn't know about me yet, she soon would. Because love like this couldn't stay in the shadows forever. But days blurred into weeks, and with them, the lines I swore I would never cross grew fainter and fainter. What had begun as stolen moments behind closed doors turned into a rhythm, almost like a second life running parallel to my first. Every morning, Nathan would greet me in the office with nothing more than a professional nod, his expression perfectly composed, but when no one was looking, his hand would brush mine just long enough to send a shiver racing through me. At lunch, we'd slip away, sometimes just to talk in the quiet of his car, other times unable to resist the pull of each other's mouths. Our passion burning brighter for the secrecy dot, it was dangerous, it was reckless, and it was intoxicating, but it couldn't last. One night, he arrived at my apartment carrying a bottle of wine, his tie loose, his face drawn with exhaustion. He didn't even wait for me to speak before pulling me into his arms, burying his face against my neck. I can't keep pretending at home, he whispered, his voice breaking. Every time Claire looks at me, I feel like I'm betraying her. All over again. But when I'm with you, God, when I'm with you, I feel alive. I held him tighter, torn between the rush of his confession and the weight of what it meant. Because every kiss, every touch, wasn't just a spark anymore, it was a fire consuming everything we had once been. That night, we didn't rush. There was no urgency, no panic about being caught, no fear of the world outside. Instead, we lingered in each other, tracing every inch, every scar, every secret, as though learning each other for the first time. His hands moved with reverence. His lips spoke words I'd never heard him say aloud. I love you, he whispered into my skin. I froze, my heart stuttering in my chest. He pulled back, his eyes searching mine, raw and unguarded. I've tried to fight it, but I can't. It's not just an affair, not for me. You're more than that. You're everything. Tears pricked at my eyes because I knew I felt the same. But admitting it aloud felt like crossing a threshold we can never return from. And yet, I found myself whispering back, I love you, too. The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was freeing. For the first time, we allowed ourselves to believe in us, not just in the passion, but in the possibility of something real. But Claire's shadow loomed larger with each passing day. She began showing up at the office more frequently, sometimes bringing Nathan lunch, sometimes lingering just long enough to remind me of her presence. Each time her eyes met mine, there was something sharp behind them, like she was watching. For cracks in the walls, one afternoon, she stopped by my desk with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Funny, she said lightly, tapping the stack of files I'd been organizing. Nathan says he's been swamped, drowning in work. But when I check in, I always find you here late too. What a coincidence. I forced a smile, though my palms went clammy. That's the job, isn't it? Long hours. Her gaze lingered, as though she were weighing every syllable I spoke. Then she leaned closer, her voice a whisper only I could hear. Take care of yourself. Burnout is dangerous. The words were innocuous enough, but the look in her eyes said something else entirely. She knew, or at least she was close. That night, Nathan came over again, his jaw tight, his movements restless. "She's circling," he muttered, pacing my living room. Every time I think I've convinced her, she comes back with another question, another reason to doubt. I don't know how much longer I can hold it together. "Then don't," I said quietly. He stopped, staring at me. "You can't live." "Two lives forever, Nathan. Sooner or later, you'll have to choose." His expression was tormented, but his hand found mine, squeezing like a lifeline. "And what if I choose you?" My breath caught. The thought both thrilled and terrified me. Because choosing me meant shattering everything else, his marriage, his reputation, even his family. But in that moment, with his hand warm against mine, and his eyes burning with conviction, I let myself believe that night was different. It wasn't desperation or escape, it was love. Fierce, consuming, undeniable love. Every kiss was a promise, every touch an anchor. Every whispered word a vow neither of us had dared make before by the time dawn crept through my window. I knew nothing would ever be the same again, because we weren't just lovers anymore. We were bound by something deeper, something we could no longer hide. And whether the world was ready or not, the truth was coming.